Welcome to the Health Data Ethics Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Owens. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about how Meta AI's large language model was trained on a data set that, according to recent unredacted court documents, contained massive amounts of copyrighted material without consent from the authors or compensation. This isn't just a tech story, although it is definitely a really interesting tech story. And as a reader, this is really hitting home for me. But it also raises really serious ethical and legal questions for how we're using AI in medicine. So, first, let's dive in with a really quick summary of what happened. So I read this fantastic article in Wired that broke down how Meta's Llama LLM model was trained using the Books 3 dataset, which is a dataset from a pirated database, which is known to contain copyrighted works for training those open source LLMs. There are ongoing lawsuits, but I want to be clear, this database is not containing little known authors or your vanity press stuff. This is major authors, major contemporary authors like Margaret Atwood, Stephen King, Zadie Smith, Colson Whitehead, a lot of really household names in publication. There's a lot of ongoing lawsuits about this, and Meta's own employees in the article are on the record as saying that they're concerned about the copyright infringement risks. But why this matters for us, in addition to being concerned about the ethics of artificial intelligence in general, it matters for us because if our foundation isn't solid, then everything we build on it is also shaky. It would be like building a clinical decision support model on a foundation of pirated textbooks and just hoping that no one noticed. We want to make sure that when we're building models into our healthcare, that our provenance is sound, and so we can both feel good and trust the models that we're deploying. As I was reading through this, it kept me thinking about my past in clinical research, right? And the clinical research training is based on past shining examples of how not to do clinical research, like Nazi experimentation or the Tuskegee syphilis study. A lot of modern medicine is really in the debt of this research that was done under unethical conditions. And so, I was thinking about that, and obviously, this is not the same, right? Copyright infringement is a crime, but it is not the same as the very serious human rights infringements that happened during unethical clinical research experimentation. But they both raise the kind of ethical taint concerns, right? So we have a field that is built on a foundation of wrongdoing, right? Of either willful misunderstanding of the rights of others or of, just a disregard for human rights. So we're facing this now in real time. So how do we go forward using these models that are questionable? Or do we pause and demand clean data and consented data? There's this real pattern of building scientific progress on unethical ground, and every time the whole field has to grapple with it. And now artificial intelligence is doing the same thing. This comes to bear on healthcare institutions in two ways. One is that when you're deploying artificial intelligence in your healthcare system, you are very likely using one of these public models that may have questionable data provenance for its training data. It's good to think about this as you're vetting your models that you're putting into deployment, whether that's a model that's developed in-house based on an open source model, or whether that's a vendor who has fine-tuned an open source model and is now selling you the rights to use that in your ecosystem. This is something that should be added to your standard vetting and governance process. If you can ask for provenance of the training data, if you can talk with a vendor or with a developer about how they trained the model, did they use it did they train the model using publicly available data, or did they use a licensed data set? It also raises questions about development in-house for hospitals. So when you're using your own data that your health system does own and have the right to use, under HIPAA, I do also wonder, do we need to innovate in ways that keep our patients safe and private? And I want to talk really specifically about opting out of your patient data being used to train AI systems. This is a right in the EU, right? The EU's GDPR includes the right to be forgotten, and it limits the automated decision-making that can take place using your data. The US does not have the same regulatory framework, which then puts the burden on health systems to lead with that kind of moral transparency. So can we disclose to our patients how our AI tools are trained? And can we offer patients a meaningful mechanism to opt out, not only of AI use in their care, but also to opt their data out of being used to train AI models in-house? It's really helpful if we can think about a deployment architecture that allows us to say, no, we're not going to use this for a particular patient's care. And when we're pulling data sets, is there a way to flag or to segregate data from patients who have said, please do not use my data to train a model? I don't want that. So really what I'm asking is for all of us to think about AI governance that considers the inherent human rights and dignity of both patients and their data, and not just our performance metrics. And then let's also shift our thinking to include not just, hey, what this model can do, but also how was it built and can we trust it? Do we understand the data that was used to train it? And then my last thought is that just because it's legal doesn't make it ethical, right? There are plenty of things that are legal to do that are not ethical to do. And in healthcare, ethics is really the foundation of everything that we do. It has to be baked in from the very beginning.